the quick update is we released our September forecast last week, and basically that forecast has a delayed recovery. Right, everything is pushed back roughly 6 months because of the surge in cases on Oahu, because of the additional shutdown, because of the postponement of reopening to tourism. And so rather than having a relatively robust bounce back in 2021, it's actually doesn't really start back up until second half of 2021 when in our baseline forecast the tourism recovery is quite a bit stronger under a maintained assumption that by the second half of 2021, a vaccine will become more widely available. That results in very limited job growth in 2021, about 2% job growth in 2021, and actually a second year of decline in real income. And in all of the scenarios, we just like our previous forecasts, we did a set of scenarios, and like our previous scenarios, we have a very, very long, drawn-out recovery that has the unemployment rate in our baseline at around 4% in 2023 through 2025. Average of 12% this year, falling to about 9% next year, and then falling from there. And the difference between the high and the low is very, very large, with the high being a much more rapid recovery of tourism and the low being a much more delayed. The key takeaway that I keep harping on, and I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it, but really we can't separate the progress, the public health progress, the management of the virus and management of the risk from the virus from the behavior of the economy. And so one of the slides I was going to show was the COVID POW dashboard that showed that we're making progress. Right, our 7-day averages continue to come down a little bit, and our UHERO Economic Pulse Index turned up for the first time since June. So it had plateaued in June and declined through July and August, and it turned up a little bit in the last week's report, and that was primarily because of more people back at work. Still, obviously, not anywhere near satisfactory. We've got a long ways to go, but it's nice to see that it actually turned the corner. We saw an increase in job openings, job advertisements, an increase in time people were spending at work and number of people at work. And then the last slide I was going to show was from our data portal, from the UHERO data portal, that showed that we actually were able to get some of the higher frequency, the small business revenue data is now available for the counties on our data portal. So it's not just state-centric anymore, and we're continuing to try to add additional county-level detail if we can. The report basically shows 14% job losses for the year for 2020. Not that different than what we had said before. The big difference is just that because of the longer time it's going to take to really get the economy moving again, with the delay of reopening to tourism and the additional COVID cases on Oahu, it's just 2021 is just not as strong as it was in our May forecast.
Carl, can you first of all, thanks for the update. Can you speak to the longer term repercussions to Hawaii lagging the broader national economy, and what that means for our jobs and demography and the like?
So essentially what happens in our forecasting models is when our unemployment rate stays elevated for an extended period of time, particularly relative to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, we end up with more outmigration than we normally experience. And as you know, we've already seen population decline now for, I believe it's 3 years. And that just continues. It actually accelerates in 2021. It's a drag on the overall economy. We're talking continued population loss for the next several years. And basically that means that at the end of this forecast sample in 2025, we're still about 25,000 jobs short of where we were in 2019. And, our unemployment rate is getting back near in the 4%, 3.5% to 4% range, but we've lost population, we've lost labor force. And so we're a smaller economy. And actually in our forecast, we're a more productive economy. That's a little bit on the hopeful side, but our income and our GDP do recover by 2025. And so that's part of a remaking, I think, of the economy in a little bit smaller tourism and other sectors grow more.
Carl, this is Micah. I would assume that outmigration of people is a demographic that is it's our engine. It's our workforce of people. It's the people that are capable of leaving, have the resources to leave, and have skill sets that would likely be very valuable to the reset of our economy. Have you guys kind of quantified that or thought about that? And what's your perspective on that?
So that's a really tough one, right? I mean, people have been worried about who's leaving and who's coming to the state for a long, long time. And in this kind of environment, the people who are doing relatively well and are going to continue to do relatively well tend to be the higher income households, the non-service, much less of the hospitality and tourism type jobs. So what we're expecting is that the people who are going to be leaving are the people who can't find work, right? And it's not people in IT, it's not people in the higher end of the job skills. It's really people who are very much service oriented, and the rest of the country recovers in those areas faster than we do. And then, longer term, the question of whether or not we're adding sort of more brain power and more high skill employees through migration, there's a real mixed batch of evidence on this, right? So while it's true that people who leave, the data suggests that the people who leave do tend to be more educated and higher skilled on average, so are the people who arrive. And long term, there is some evidence that Hawaii actually gains from population flows in terms of high productivity individuals. And Hawaii is still going to be an attractive place to be, assuming that you're able to work, run your business, work remotely possibly, and those are the kinds of businesses and sectors that we're going to want to try to facilitate going forward.
So Carl, this is Ray. So what's the aggregate net loss over that period of population that you're anticipating? I mean, I know we've been seeing a decline year over year leading up to the pandemic, and it sounds like that right. is it's even shifting further.
Yeah, so it's not enormous. We're talking about a loss of maybe 40,000 people. It's not small, but there are offsetting forces. If our economy is very weak, in our forecast we have rents and home values basically stagnating. And I know that's counter to what a lot of people observe happening today, and they think it's going to continue. And we don't think it's going to continue because of the weak economic conditions. And so if you think back to the 90s, one of the things that happened is we had stagnant population, declining home values and rents, and eventually Hawaii started to look like a better place to be because of declining costs relative to the rest of the country. And so there's, first you have people leave because they can't find jobs, and then you have people come back and invest because we begin to look relatively less expensive and an attractive place to be.
Carl, this is Connie. Can you address what you think the impact on state and local government is going to be?
Yeah, so basically the picture is actually the same one that we it's not that different than the input that I provided to the Council on Revenues when we did our last forecast update, which also pushed tax recovery back. There's still a forecast in the latest council forecast that we still anticipate a recovery of tax revenues before 2025. And the real question, I think, is whether as Hawaii community and government and businesses, if we get everything right going forward, right? We're poised to reopen with pre-flight testing. We're poised to gradually reopen more and more activities on Oahu. And, the key is that we are successful at that. And if we are, then we will see gradual economic improvement. If we're not, and we can only control what we can control, which is our own actions. We can't control whether the virus spreads more rapidly on the mainland. But if we get our own actions correct, then I think the baseline forecast, this may be the first time where we've released a forecast where, a week later, I'm not convinced that we were too optimistic. So I think in the baseline, we'll begin to see recovery in 2021, and tax revenues will also move in that direction as we get more tourists back.